Hello mech warriors, and welcome back to the Mech Lab, where we try to be a better mech commander every day. Today's topic is the absolute best mechs of 3025. We'll be looking at about 3 mechs in each of 5 categories. Flankers, which are fast mechs that want to get around to the side and behind of enemies and either backstab them, blowing out their back armor, or possibly, if you're taking a lot of them, just swarm one isolated mech and overwhelm it with close range firepower. Then we'll look at Cavalry, which are mechs that emphasize a good combination of firepower, mobility, and defense. Cavalry mechs have to be pretty well armored. They have to have good mobility. At least 5'8" movement is kind of the baseline for me. Some people consider 4'6" movement to be like extremely heavy cavalry. That's more of brawler territory for me. If you're that slow, you either better have some long range support weapons or be the one bringing the big guns. Then we're going to look at trooper mechs. These are units that can engage at any distance pretty effectively. They tend to emphasize durability and firepower over mobility. So we're talking 4'6", maybe 3'5" movement, but they're gonna have LRMs and or PPCs, and then plus have some closer range weapons like medium lasers, and they should have really good armor. I'm talking like 15 on every piece if possible, or more. 20 armor on every part would be great. Then we'll look at Brawlers. These are the close range fighters. They want to get in close, beat on you with a bunch of medium lasers, or an AC-20, or AC-10, lots of SRMs. If it's carrying a lot of those, it's probably a brawler. And finally, we'll look at support mechs. These are units that emphasize long-range firepower. LRMs, PPCs. These units don't care very much about movement. They just want to be able to bring long-range fire support consistently. So they should have reasonably good cooling as well, so they can maintain that barrage of fire turn after turn. For every category, I'm going to look at something that's quite cheap. We'll look at something sort of medium cost, and then we'll look at a premium, high-end, expensive unit in that category. Now, when I say premium, I don't mean super duper expensive. The most expensive mech on this list is about 1600 battle value. So I've emphasized battle value cost as one of the primary reasons why these mechs are good. They're good for their battle value, but every single one of these I would be happy to get in universe as a mech warrior. And if you're running a mech mercenary company, all of these would be fantastic additions to that force. So let's get started with flankers. We're talking about the fastest mechs in your force, 7'11", 8'12" movement with some close range firepower that they can really put the hurt on someone once they exploit a weakness in your enemy's formation. And one of the best mechs for this for the cost is definitely the Locust. A little 20-ton ankle biter, not gonna blow anyone away with its firepower, but it's really fast, and the 2 variants that I want to talk about, the 1V and the 1E, are both pretty well armored. We've got 10 on the center torso and 8 on both of the legs. The 1E's big bonus is that it has flippable arms, so it can shoot behind itself, which essentially means that it has a 360 turret of fire, which is really nice. But the weapons are mounted on the arms, meaning that a single large laser hit is going to completely remove 50% of your firepower. On the other hand, the 1V is over 100 battle value cheaper and doesn't have quite as much damage output, but its medium laser is center torso mounted, so it's easier to keep that weapon in the fight. As long as you still got your legs and your center torso, the 1V will still fight at pretty much full effectiveness. It's also pretty good at killing infantry, which is potentially an important thing for your light mech to do. You've only got a few points left. The Locust is a great add to your force. Next up, we have what might be my favorite 3025 mech. The Mongoose is very fast, 8'12" movement, has great armor, 12 on the legs and center torso, 10 on the side torsos, 3 medium lasers and a small laser. Gives this enough punch that it can really put the hurt on someone. It's got a reasonable price tag at 740 battle value. The Mongoose is a really good mech. I take this pretty much every time I play in 3025. It is that good. I typically actually prefer it over our next mech because it is significantly cheaper and pretty much does the same job. So next up, we've got the Jenner 7F. This is the premium of premium flanker mechs. It's a little bit slower than the other two with 711 ground speed, but it makes up for that with a 5 jump. Being able to jump 5 is really, really good. You can jump into heavy woods to get a 5 total TMM, and with 15 armor on the center torso, and legs, this is a mech that's pretty hard to actually bring down. The mongoose is annoying to kill. This thing requires a PPC and a medium laser hit before going internal on its most important components. Now, one slight weakness is that its weapons are all arm mounted, but these are flippable. So it can do the Locust thing where it has a 360 turret on its fire. It does have some heat problems. If it runs and fires all of its weapons, it's going to 4 heat. That means that it needs to cool off or only fire 3 medium lasers if it's running the turn after it alpha strikes. It's also a little expensive at 1,000 battle value, but overall, the Gen 7F, premium light mech. I would absolutely recommend taking this in pretty much any force if you want a fast, flexible flanker. Now we're moving on to the cavalry section. These mechs are going to be ones that have reasonable movement, either say 5'8" or 6'9" movement, preferably with jump jets, and we want like 15 armor if we can get it. We'll accept 10, and we want good firepower. So on the cheap end of this scale, I've got the Firestarter. These are the 2 best variants in my opinion. These 2 variants of the Firestarter are the best in my opinion, the A and the M Mirage. The Mirage has much better armor, 16 on the most important parts and 12 on everything else. Is so good. PPC plus an SRM hit before going internal on the arms and torsos is great. Does have a right torso bomb with 200 machine gun ammo. If that goes, the mech is gone, but it has less heat issues than the Firestarter 9A, although it does have overall a little bit less potential firepower. The 9A emphasizes more firepower. We've got 4 flamers, although 3 of them are front mounted, so you can cook a mech pretty good with that. In intro tech, if you're using the flamers cause damage plus heat rule, these 3 flamers can do potentially 6 damage and 6 heat. That's enough to push intro tech mechs into uncomfortable territory, especially if they're already running a little hot like an Awesome or an Archer. Heat control can be very powerful in this era, and when it's not trying to lay on the heat, it's got 2 medium lasers and 2 small lasers for some pretty good close range punch. The 4 flamers also can be used to create a circle of fire around itself as it jumps through either fields or forests, which can be really effective at creating a big smoke screen really quick, or burning down an enemy's cover. So as a really cool and flexible cavalry mech, I really like the Firestarter 9A. As something with a little bit more brawling power and durability, the Mirage is probably your best bet out of these 2. And these are both under 800 battle value, so the value you get here is pretty great with a nice 696 movement profile. I really couldn't decide between the next 2 units because they're both so incredibly good, and they're good at different things. We've got the Ostrok 2C, which is a premium 1228 battle value 5'8" mech, only 144 armor, but the distribution is beautiful. 20 on the legs, 22 on the torsos. This is a really hard mech to bring down. It has 18 damage that it can absorb with its arms. These are pretty much just there as shields. The mech quite simply does not care about its arms at all. All of the weapons are torso mounted, 2 large lasers, 2 medium lasers, and an SRM-4. It has great medium range firepower with the 2 large lasers, and with 15 heat sinks, it can afford to fire them 2 turns in a row, and then it'll start slowing down. But what it really wants to do is get in close and use all of its short range weapons, maybe either on a cooldown turn or in combination with its large laser to get a big impact in 1 turn. Then we've got the Royal Guard Griffin. This is a Steiner exclusive, and it is just a brutal close range fighter. With a brutal 33 damage alpha strike at close range, the Griffin 1RG is capable of tearing open enemy rear armor, still has some good medium range poke with the 1 large laser, 3 medium lasers, puts its medium range firepower pretty much on par with the Ostrok, and it is much deadlier at close range. It also doesn't have to worry as much about heat. It has 17 heat sinks, so it can fire all of its weapons a couple of turns in a row while on the move, and only just start feeling it after the 2nd turn. Now, the armor distribution here isn't as good, but 20 on all of the torsos is still very strong. 18 on the legs is still probably enough, and 14 on the arms is where we get a little bit suspect. The large laser and medium laser in the right arm are gonna get blown off pretty easily with 14 armor, but we do have more armor overall with 152, and we've got much better rear armor, which means that if we get outflanked, we're not going to be as concerned about it. And 1141 battle value, this is an extremely cheap mech, and those 2 tons of ammo in the left and right torso are reasonably well crit padded. It's about a 25% chance if you get crit that this is going to go up in flames, but it gives you a battle value discount. This is about as cheap as you're gonna get a really good medium mech, a great cavalry unit. I love the 1RG a lot. And this is a very competitive space. We've got the Griffin 1S, we've got the Wolverine 6K. There's a lot of really good cavalry mechs. These 2 were just 2 of the best. But if we're talking about 3025 cavalry mechs, everyone knows the Wolverine 6M is probably the best of the bunch. We have a large laser, 2 medium lasers, and an SRM6. We have 14 heat sinks, which means that we can fire either the large laser and one of our medium range weapons, or all of our short-range weapons together very comfortably to cool off. Great armor, 25 on the center torso, 20 on the sides, 18 on the arms, which is maxed, and 19 on the legs is actually a little bit thin. I would actually like to see 2 of the armor come off the center torso and go onto the legs. I think that if we're talking intro tech cavalry mechs, the Cronus is slightly better than this. It's essentially a Wolverine 6M with slightly better weaponry. It has an extra medium laser and an SRM4 instead of the SRM6. But this is about those 3025 mechs. And there is no doubt in my mind that the Wolverine 6M is the finest cavalry mech that you can get. It is a little bit premium, nearly 1300 battle value, but with that great 585 movement profile, decent heat sinking, great armor. This is just a great unit overall. I would never be sad to have a Wolverine 6M in my force. Alright, we're moving on to trooper mechs. So these are mechs that can engage at any range. So our first pick here, the budget pick, the Vindicator 1X, 1000 battle value, decent armor overall, 464 movement, means that it's pretty flexible. It can jump to get into positions that ground-bound mechs cannot. 15 heat sinking means that it can fire all of its weapons every turn, and it only picks up movement heat, which is great. We have 2 machine guns, meaning they can take on infantry and destroy them real easily, and we've got a PPC and an LRM-5 for our long-range firepower. This is almost as good as a Griffin, which costs around 200 more battle value than this, and it has backup weapons, so it's actually arguably better than the Griffin, especially because it doesn't have the heat issues that the Griffin has. But like, looking at the armor distribution, this is almost as tanky as the Wolverine that we were just looking at, and it has almost comparable firepower. The PPC and LRM-5 are much better at long range, and then it has a medium laser and 2 machine guns for up close work. And I mean, the PPC is still going to be able to fire at that close range. 2 minimum range just basically puts it at medium range once you're up close and personal with this thing. But it probably prefers to be at range 3, where it can fire PPC medium laser, 2 machine guns all together. Overall, for 1000 battle value, I don't think you're going to find a better mech than the Vindicator. Next up, our slightly more expensive, not quite premium trooper. You know him, you love him. It's the Thunderbolt 5S. LRM-15 and a large laser for that long and medium range fighting. Triple medium lasers and an SRM-2 for that up close work. Once you get to point blank, you can start adding in those machine guns, and these will deal with infantry really well. 15 heat sinks means that you can use pretty good combinations of weapons without worrying too much about heat, and it is just an armor brick. 30 on the center torso, 11 on the rear, meaning that you can't get to that sensitive center torso double ammo bin very easily. Nearly 30 armor on the legs, 20 on the arms, 24 on the side torsos. This is just an absolute tank. You're gonna have to chew through a heck of a lot of armor to get to those juicy internals, and it's just gonna keep fighting. I recently took a Thunderbolt in a Star League era tournament, and it absolutely held up against the more advanced Star League tech units. You gotta love a Thunderbolt. It's a little expensive. 1335 battle value is not cheap, but you get what you pay for. This is a quality unit. It can fight at every range really effectively. Okay movement with 4.6. The Thunderbolt is the quintessential trooper mech. Now, our third pick for trooper is gonna maybe be a little bit controversial. Its role is listed as Juggernaut. It's 1559 battle value value. It's very premium. It's the Stalker 3F, 85-ton trooper mech. Manny, are you insane? Well, we're talking 200 battle value more than a Thunderbolt for quite a bit better armor and much better firepower. Now, you give up some of that movement, but the Stalker can slowly plod towards the enemy and fight very effectively at every range. We've got 2 LRM-10s for the long range fighting, 2 large lasers for the mid-range fighting. You can mix in one of those LRM-10s without getting too warm, especially if you're standing still. That's heat neutral. 2 large lasers and an LRM-10 is a big punch for mid-range fighting. And then we've got a whopping 4 medium lasers at close range, backed up by 2 SRM-6s. This mech requires a lot of heat discipline. It's very tempting to just alpha strike everything and cook yourself, which you can do, but it's carrying a lot of ammo, so it might explode. But this ammo is pretty well crit padded. We've got the LRM ammo in the arms, which have a lot of stuff in them. Obviously, very low chance to hit those. And the left and right torso have some heat sinks and stuff in there, so they're actually also pretty well crit padded. With its incredible bulk, able to take a huge beating. It doesn't have actually that much more armor than a Thunderbolt, only a few more points. But the armor distribution that you get here is crazy. 25 on the legs and torsos, 23 on the arms. So it's able to take 2 PPCs and a medium laser before going internal on most of its components. That is a lot of dedicated fire. So it's an armor brick, it's got decent heat sinking, it has great firepower at every single range. Of course, you do pay quite a bit for that, but because of the way that heat works, you're actually getting a pretty big battle value discount on all of the close range weapons, because the 2 large lasers and 2 LRM-10s hit the heat cap and go over it. So the Stalker 3F, definitely one of the best mechs in the game, but I wouldn't classify it as a long-range support mech necessarily. It has too many close-range weapons and medium-range weapons mixed in here. If this had like 2 PPCs and 2 LRM-10s and maybe like a couple of medium lasers, yeah, this would be considered a long-range support mech. But because it's mixing ranges, it's able to fire really effectively at long, at medium, at close. I think that it fits better as a trooper general purpose mech. It can fight at every range and do it very well. Alright, we're getting into the real big damage now. We're talking about Brawlers. These guys emphasize having close ranged weapons, lots of armor, don't necessarily have the best speed, but these guys are tanky bricks that are going to bring the hurt to the close range fight. They walk up to an objective and they hold it by pushing people off with crazy close range firepower. And the first mech here, our cheapest brawler, 1138 battle value, the Hunchback 4P. This is an absolute beast of a mech. 23 heat sinks means that it can pretty much fire all of its medium lasers without worrying too much about the heat. 20 armor on the legs and torsos, 26 on the center torso, 16 on the arms, means that those 2 arm lasers are pretty well protected, and just everything in the right torso. It does mean that if you lose your right torso, you're kind of cooked. But hopefully with the good armor that this thing has, it will not go down without a fight. Now, as all Hunchbacks, it does have kind of weak rear armor, but unlike the standard Hunchback 4G, we don't have ammo to explode here. So if they get into that right torso and take out a couple of your medium lasers, well, at least they didn't blow you up. The Hunchback 4P is always a good take. There is never a time when I wouldn't want a Hunchback 4P on my squad. Unless maybe I'm doing like a pure Scout Lance, because that 4-6 movement isn't really doing it any favors. Now, you can't really talk about the Grasshopper or the Guillotine on their own. You should be talking about them together, because they're both pretty much like variants of the same mech. They're both 464, they're both around 1400 battle value. They both have great armor, and they both carry 4 medium lasers and a large laser, and then a missile weapon. So the Grasshopper emphasizes a little bit more long-range firepower. It has more armor overall, which is why it's slightly more expensive. Better armor on the legs and the center torso, worse armor on the side torsos, better armor on the arms. And it has incredibly thick rear armor. So one trick that I've pulled with the Grasshopper many times in games is I will purposely give my back armor to an enemy in order to tempt them into hitting me there, and then they just hit a brick of 10 and 13 in the side and center torsos, and can't really do anything to the Grasshopper with that. Now, the LRM-5 on the Grasshopper is nice for getting a little bit of poke at long range, and a lot of people actually like to put smoke in here so that you can lay down a little bit of smoke cover. I think that that's actually probably a better use of the LRM-5. It doesn't really do that much damage, but you can use the LRM-5 and the large laser in combination if smoke is banned at your table, which it probably should be, and once you get in close, you can actually fire the large laser and all the medium lasers together without worrying about heat at all, unless you're jumping. On the other hand, we've got the Guillotine 4L, much better close-range firepower, but it doesn't have the heat sinks to be able to fire everything together, so you're gonna have to like turn off one of your medium lasers to fire an SRM-6, or if you're starting to pick up some heat, maybe you can just turn off the large laser for a turn and cool off by firing all of your short-range weapons. When it comes to these two, it usually ends up being a function of how much battle value do I have left, and if I've got a little bit more battle value, I'll go for the Grasshopper. If I've got a little bit less, I'll go for the Guillotine. Now, for our next entry, I had a little bit of trouble deciding where to put it, because the Warhammer 6D is an incredible mech. It has enough long-range firepower that you could consider it a long-range support mech, and it has enough close-range firepower that you could probably consider it to be a trooper. 34 on the center torso, 30 on the legs, 22 on the arms and torsos. This thing is a brick. It's very hard to move. It's a pure energy boat, no ammo to explode. It's a zombie that's going to take a lot of effort to take down. And with 20 heat sinks, it can comfortably fire either both PPCs or a PPC and all of its close-range weapons together. It's also pretty reasonably costed. It's only a little bit more expensive than the Grasshopper, and has much better long-range capability versus the Grasshopper's much better short-range capability. The Warhammer 6D is a Davion exclusive. That's what the D stands for. It could be argued that this is the best mech in Introtech. I don't think that there is a better, more flexible, tougher to kill energy boat in the game. Now we're moving on to long-range support mechs. These are the mechs that stand in the back, rain hell on your enemies turn after turn, but in my experience, the best ones also have a little bit of something to defend themselves up close. And that is what our first design emphasizes. We've got 464 movement, meaning that it's actually pretty mobile, under 1,000 battle value, and 2 LRM-10s for the long-range punch, 3 medium lasers for close range. The Whitworth 1 is easily one of the best mechs in 3025. Comparing this to the Dervish, it has comparable close range firepower, better armor, less mobility obviously, but it has the same firepower at long and short range, is far less explosive, and really fulfills that long range support that can reposition really well. And it is cheap as chips. Under 1,000 battle value for decent long range support fire. Try out the Whitworth. It is a worthy mech. Now, there's a lot of variants of the Archer, but I actually don't like the versions that have LRM-20 packs, because the difference on average between the LRM-20 and the LRM-15 is 1 cluster hit and 3 damage. So 2 LRM-15s is going to put up about the same amount of pressure, and this mech can fire them more consistently. Not only does it have more ammo, meaning that it can fire every single turn for 15 turns if it has to, the 10 heat produced by its LRM-15s lines up with the heat sinks. It doesn't have to take a turn off. So a constant missile barrage of LRM-15s, in my opinion, is probably better than a semi-constant barrage of 2 LRM-20s, especially because we have an incredible mix of close-range weapons here. We've got 2 SRM-4s, 2 medium lasers, 2 rear-mounted medium lasers. So if you try and get into the thin rear armor of this thing, to try and get into those sensitive torsos with lots of ammo in them, you're going to find a nasty surprise of 2 medium lasers in your face. Now, the 2S could definitely also be considered a trooper mech, but it has even more firepower at long range than the Stalker, and I consider these close range weapons to be more for self-defense or defending other fire support units. If you just want a pure fire support mech with lots of missiles or lots of PPCs, I would actually recommend going for a tank like an LRM carrier or a Shrek PPC carrier, or maybe a Partisan with a bunch of AC5s or something. You're gonna get a lot more bang for your buck with those units. The Archer is more of a complete package where it can offer very good fire support, but it also has a lot of armor. It's extremely tough to take down, over 200 armor. It's pretty much as tough as a Thunderbolt. Then it has a nasty close range surprise. Now, It has some heat issues with the close range weapons complement. If I'm running this thing in a campaign, I'm probably going to remove the 2 medium lasers in the rear and just stick in 2 more heat sinks so that we can even further increase the pressure that it can place on enemies. But the Archer is kind of a do-everything mech, and I think that its long-range fire support is good enough to be considered in this category. Finally, we have everyone's favorite energy boat, the awesome 8Q. 28 heat sinks means that it can't quite fire its PPCs every single turn, but it can get darn close. Now, a lot of people will do like 3-3-2 and shed all of the heat when they're at 4 heat so they don't get slowed down. But the Awesome is so slow, you probably want to walk up to somewhere on the map and then just stay there anyways. So you want to do 3-3-3-2, right? You shed all 6 heat at once. You can even do 3-3-3-3-2, firing 4 alpha strikes in a row, going to 8 heat, and then on your off turn, you have a penalty to hit, but you got 4 turns of really heavy pressure from 3 PPC shots. That is some really good support fire. We've got the token small laser in the head to scare off people at close range. It's a staple of the Awesome. Every single one of them has it pretty much. It's kind of not that scary, but honestly, getting close up to an Awesome, it's gonna just shoot all of its PPCs at you at the same time as well, so that's terrifying. You don't want to face that. Incredible armor, 30 plus on the torso and legs, 24 on everything else, 10 in the rear, 19 in the rear of the center torso. One of the things that is actually a small weakness of this mech is its 30 armor on the center torso, means that it's paying a lot of battle value for almost 20 armor on the rear. It could shift some of that to the front so that it's less likely to get unlucky hit locations and start getting engine crits, because once this thing starts getting engine crits, it's over. I mean, the heat scale just starts going nuts. But there's no ammo to crit. This mech can get very hot without having to worry about much, just shutting down basically. And yeah, the 3-5 movement is a little bit slow, but all it needs to do is get into a decent position and start laying down PPC fire every turn. 1605 battle value, the most expensive mech on this list, even more expensive than the Stalker, but it is worth every single point. In that same tournament where I ran the Thunderbolt, I ran the Awesome, and it did work. So that is our list for today. So if you like lists like this, I've got a bunch of them on my channel. Go check them out in the Mech Lab playlist. Leave a comment down below. Are there any mechs that I missed? Or do you think that I misclassified any mechs? I'd love to hear from you. Always love to chat with people in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Helps let YouTube know that it should be pushing my videos out to more people. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have a great day.